Welcome to the MEMONEET Batch. Myself Ritik here, your biology SME. So in the last video of the plant kingdom, we have discussed about the algae as well as the bryophytes. So in this video lecture, I'll be explaining you about the bryophytes, stereophytes, gymnosperms as well as angiosperms in detail. So what are pteridophytes, gymnosperms and as well as angiosperms? So yeah. Yes. So the coming to the next one, they are the bryophytes. So what do you mean by bryophytes? So bryophytes includes various mosses as well as the liverworts. So coming to the mosses, they are actually small, then non-vascular, flowerless plants. Okay. Whereas coming to the liverworts, so basically they are land plant. Uh, and it is opposite to that. That means it has vascular system, and even this is also somewhat flowerless itself. So yeah, this is about the bryophytes. And coming to the bryophytes, they are majorly found in most, or they're grown in the moist shady areas such as hills and all. You can actually see this bryophytes basically, and they're called to be the amphibians of the plant kingdom. Why amphibians of the plant kingdom? Because these plants can live in both, they can live in soil, but they want water for the sexual reproduction, so that's why they're actually called as the amphibians of the plant kingdom. So they are not usually occurs in the damp, humid as well as shady localities. That means shady places or shady areas. Okay, and they play a very important role in the plant succession on bark, rocks, and soil. That means soil formation. They normally play a very important role. So this is all about the introduction of the bryophytes. So another very important point of the bryophytes is the plant body of the bryophytes uh, is more different than that of the algae. That means you can actually differentiate whether it is what is algae and what is bryophytes. So it is thallus-like and prostrate or somewhat erect body, and they normally attach to the substratum. Okay, they normally attach to the substratum by either unicellular or multicellular rhizoids. What are rhizoids? They're somewhat, when I'm talking about rhizoid side, so they're actually an epidermis growth, uh, outer growth. So rhizoids are actually the trichomes. Trichomes are nothing but, so rhizoids are nothing but trichomes. They are an epidermal outer growth. I mean, somewhat if you consider there will be an outer growth. So they are normally called as rhizoids. So this is all about the introduction of the bryophytes. And coming to the major structure, they normally possess, okay, root-like, leaf-like, stem-like structure. Not completely, you cannot say that it has roots, stem, leaves, no, somewhat similar to them. So that's why we normally call it as they may possess root-like, stem-like, and leaf-like structure. Okay, so this is one thing. And the main part of the plant body of the bryophytes is actually they're haploid. Okay, so they are basically haploid. That means it also produces the gametes. Hence, they are called as gametophytes. Since they produce the gametes, they're called as gametophytes. So this is another thing. Then the sex organs in the bryophytes are basically multicellular in nature. Okay, so this is all the introduction of the bryophytes. So here it is actually a somewhat diagrammatical representation. I'm just trying to show this diagram just to have an idea how reproduction normally happens. You don't need to concentrate more on this diagram, but you should know like, okay, this is how the life cycle of the bryophytes is. So I have already explained you the main plant body of the bryophytes is haploid in nature. Then it produces the gametes, hence they are called as gametophytes. So the sex organs of the bryophytes are multicellular. These all things are I have already understood. So coming to the male thing, the male sex organ is actually called as the male sex organ is actually called as antheridium. Okay, so this is the antheridium here. So what do you mean by antheridium? It is actually the male sex organs. So the male sex organs is actually called as antheridium, and they produce the biflagellated anthrozoids. So what do you mean by biflagellated anthrozoids? Where you can see they normally, that is, this entire thing is actually the male sex organ. So these male sex organs, they normally produce the biflagellated flagellate anthrozoids. Antherozoids. Okay, so this is all about the male sex organ. So when coming to the female sex organs, they are basically, the female sex organs are the archeogonium. Okay, so what do you mean by archeogonium? So here you can see the structure. This is the archeogonium. The entire structure is actually called archeogonium. And you can see what kind of structure it is. It is somewhat flask shaped structure, right? It is somewhat flask shaped structure, and it normally produces a single egg. Okay, it normally produces a single egg. So when this antheridium, it produces this biflagellata anthrozoids, right? So they come and fuses here. So once that has happened, it undergoes what? Fertilization. So fertilization, that means once this antherozoids get fused with this archeogonium, that to egg, especially to the egg. So it leads to the formation of what? Zygote formation. So this is all about the formation. So immediately, the zygote will not undergo the reduction division immediately. Okay. So instead of that, what they do is they are going to produce a multicellular body called as sporophyte. This is the sporophyte. So immediately it is going to produce a multicellular body, which is actually called as sporophyte. So after the sporophyte formation, so these sporophyte is actually non-free living, but they are normally attached to the photosynthetic. That means you can see here. So they are normally attached to this photosynthetic gametophyte, and there they are going to drive the nutrients from those photosynthetic gametophytes. That means the one which is able to prepare its own food. So it will going to attach there, and from there they're going to get their food, that is whatever the required nutrients and all, through them. Okay. uh, so some cells of this sporophyte, it normally later on it undergoes the reduction division, that is meiosis. So reduction division, wherever happens, it is obviously the meiosis will take place to produce the haploid spores formation. So this is the haploid spores formation. So to produce the spores. Okay. So now what happens? These spores will germinate to produce the gametophyte, obviously. So these spores, will later on, uh, will see, this is the spores, this is germinative spores. That means later on these spores will germinate to form the gametophyte. So this is the young leaf gametophyte. That means the young gametophyte. Later on, it will develop into the adult one. So this is all about the life cycle of the gametophyte. So this is actually the life cycle of the bryophytes. So I hope the life cycle is clear with the bryophytes. So in general, So what are the economic importance of the bryophytes then? Some of the mosses or some of the bryophytes, they provides food. That means they normally provides food for the herbaceous mammals as well as birds and other animals also. So some species of bryophytes such as Smagnum are the species. So what happens is they provide a peat that have long been used as a fuel. Okay, so they are being used as a fuel and as a even packing materials for the transportation of the goods in the ship, as they have the capacity to water holding capacity. That is capacity to hold the water. And another thing is, these mosses are along with the lichens. Okay, so there will be always the first prior to colonize the rock as rock and all. Hence, they play a very ecological importance also because they actually make in the soil formation and also they play a very important role. So that is they decompose the rock, making the suitable substance suitable for the growth of the higher plants. So that is one of the other economic important. So that means suitable. So decomposed rocks makes them suitable for the growth of higher plants. This is another important. And since mosses, they forms a dense mat on the surface. So they also reduce the impact of the soil erosion impact or prevent the soil erosion also. So this is all about the bryophytes. So these bryophytes, so they have been again divided into two. So one is the liver liverworts, and the another one is one is liverwort and another one is mosses. Okay. So in detail, we will try to study the liverworts as well as the mosses. Yeah. So this is it. So some of the examples of the so this is actually the liverworts and they are actually the mosses. So some of the examples of the liverworts is, so this is actually the male thallus and this is the female thallus and this is the male thallus. I have already explained you the thallus, like the body part region. Okay. Then coming to the example, they're actually Markentia. Markentia is one of the example for the liverwort. And the second one is mosses. So in the mosses, what could be the example? Obviously, one is yes, funaria is an example. Then the another one is sphagnum is one of the example. Sphagnum right now I have explained you. It is actually used because what is sphagnum? It is actually a mosses which provides a peat, right? It provides a peat that is peat. Okay. So what is this? It has a something like have long been used as a fuel, peat, which long being used as a fuel. Right. So this is all about the bryophytes and economic importance of the bryophytes that I think I have already discussed about the economic importance of the bryophytes also. So as I told you that the bryophytes have been divided into liverworts as well as the mosses. We will study about them in detail. So coming to the liverworts. So what about the liverworts? So they grow in the moist, shady habitats such as banks of streams, marshy ground, damp soil, bark of trees, and deep in the roots also. So the plant body is thyloid. That is, if you take an example of Markentia, it is thyloid in shape. Like you can easily see like the plant body and all. So this thyroid or thallus is dorsoventricle and closely appear pressed to the surface. That means substrate. If so, imagine it is a substrate like a rock or something. So it is closely attached to the substrate, pressed to the substrate. Then the leaf, okay, the leaf, they normally the leaf membrane. So the it normally appearance will be leafy like appearance, okay. So they will show a leafy like appearance. Then appearance will be seen in two rows on the stem like structure. So that means appearance. So what happens is they normally find as a tiny leaf like appearance in two rows of the stem like structure. So that means in leafy like appearance, and in the next row you will actually find the stem like structure. Okay. So coming to the reproduction again, if it is asexual reproduction, it takes place by the fragmentation. So fragmentation of thalli. That means so there will be a fragmentation. Either this any part of this it is going to cut off and another new plant body will develop. So it is one method, or by the formation of the specialized structure called as gemmules, or either by the formation of the specialized structure called as gamma. Okay, so what is the specialized structure? Gamma. Can you see here the gamma? So this specialized structures will grow, and they are the rhizoids. That means somewhat root-like structure. You can see here somewhat root-like structure. So they are called as rhizoids. And on the surface, a gamma, that is a specialized structure, will grow. They are normally called as gamma, and individually it will be cup-like structure. So they are called as gamma cap. Okay, so gamma cap. So if it is single, we normally called as gamma. If there are many, then we call it as gemme. So this is clear to you. So gamma or gemme, so basically they are green in color, obviously. So green in color, then they are multicellular in nature and asexual buds. So which later on it is going to develop into a gamma cap, as I have told you, I have shown you gamma caps, which are normally located on the thalli. So this structure you are seeing, it is actually called as thalli. This is all about the gamma. And this thing, that is the gamma, later on it is going to gets detached from the parental body, and it is going to germinate into a new individual. Okay, and coming to during sexual, this is all about the asexual one. But during sexual reproduction, okay. So during sexual reproduction, what happens? The male as well as the female sex organs are produced either on the same, thalli, or else the different thalli. It depends. So once the male as well as female, organs are being produced, sexual reproductive organs are being produced. So the sporophytes differentiated into foot. That means you can easily differentiate them as the sporophyte has been differentiated into foot, seta, as well as capsule. So after the meiosis, what happens? The spores are produced, and within the capsule, the spores are produced after the meiosis. Okay, and these spores will germinate to form a free-living gametophyte. So this is all about the liverworts reproduction part. I hope this is clear. So the next one is the last for the bryophytes is the mosses. So what about the mosses? The mosses coming to the predominant stage of the life cycle. So these mosses, as a gametophyte, which consists, the first stage will be the protein stage, and the second stage will be the leaf stage. What is this protein stage and the leaf stage? I'll say you. So the protein stage, what happens in the protein stage? So which will develop directly from the sponges, develop directly from spores. Okay. So this is about the protein stage. And the next one is the second stage. In the second stage, what happened? See, this is protein stage is clear. Uh, yes, developed from the spore, and it is somewhat creepy in nature, green in color, branched as well as frequently filamentous stage. That's what we call. So the next stage is second stage. The second stage is the leaf stage, right? So which develops from the secondary proteinema stage, and that is basically on the lateral bud. After the lateral bud, it is going to develop, and they normally consist of the upright slender axis will be present, and spirally they will be arranged. Arrangement of the leaves, like you can see the arrangement of the leaves, they are somewhat spirally in the second stage. So this is all about the second stage. And basically the plant whatever they develop, right? So they will either be attached, they will normally be attached to the soil, attached to the soil uh, through the multicellular and branch rhizoids. Okay, so through multicellular and branched rhizoids. So rhizoids means, right? It is a root-like structure. This thing you can see here. So this is the rhizoids. So in this way, it will be attached. So this is all about the mosses, like their structure and all. Okay. So now coming to the reproduction part. When coming to the vegetative reproduction, it is actually by the fragmentation and budding of the secondary protonema, that is in the secondary stage. This is one point. And in sexual reproduction, the sex organs, that is antheroid as well as archeogonia, are produced at the apex of the leaves. That is these region. Okay, this thing and this thing. So these are basically this as well as these. So male and female easily this uh, antheridium and archegonia. So they are normally archegonia. So they are actually produced on the apex of the region. Okay, so apex of the leaf shoot region. So after fertilization, what happens? The zygotes gets developed into the sporophyte. These sporophyte consist of the fruit, seta, as well as capsule. So again, this sporophyte and mosses is more elaborate when compared to the liverwort. That means when compared to the liverworts, what happens? They are most elaborated, somewhat enlarged kind of. And obviously, the capsule will be consisting of this spores, right? Yes, capsule will be consisting of spores, and spores are formed only after the meiosis, and the mosses have an elaborate mechanism of the spore dispersion. So this is all about the mosses. Okay. So some of the examples of the mosses that I have given is, yes, you can already see that. One is funaria is one example. Funaria gametophyte and sporophyte coming to this. Both gametophyte and sporophytes both happens in the funaria. So this is the funaria. So you can see this, right? So this is gametophyte and this is sporophytes formation. So the next one is spaganum. So spaganum, this is the spaganum. So where normally you will see the gametophyte thing. So this is all about the mosses. So in general, this is all about the bryophytes. So I'll move to the next topic, that is pteridophytes. So after bryophytes, pteridophytes, right? So pteridophytes, they are mostly used for the medical purpose, and they act as a soil binders. So they are also grown for the ornamental values. It means they are used in a showcase plant or they have been used in some of the functions also. So they have been also grown as an ornamental value. And coming to its evolutionary thing, they are the very first terrestrial plant which normally possess both xylem as well as phloem. That is, it normally possesses the vascular tissues. So vascular tissues means it will be consisting both xylem as well as the phloem. So the main plant body is actually the sporophyte. So sporophyte, that means which has actually been differentiated into true root, stem, and leaves. That means now you can easily differentiate the entire plant body as the root, stem, then leaves. And they, as I told, the organ, they normally possess what? Well differentiated vascular tissues. Like you can easily differentiate them, what are xylem and what are phloem, where they're present and all. So coming to the leaves, leaves are somewhat small. They are small, like microphyllus, which you have seen in the previous one. That is or they're basically not large, that is macrophylus. Okay, as you normally see it as funds in those plants, when you see, right, you will be able to differentiate. So that means leaves can be even smaller or leaves can even be large. Then this sporophyte, it normally bears the sporangia. So what is the sporangia? That are actually the subtended by the leaf-like appearance. That means sporangia are actually a leaf-like appearance. They are actually called as sporophylus. Okay. So sporophylus, in some cases, these sporophylus may form a distinct compact structure. They are called as either strobili or cones-like structure they can form in some cases. Then the sporangia, they normally produces a spores by the meiosis. Through the meiosis, they normally produce the spores by spore mother cells. Okay, so they normally produce the spores by meiosis, where in the spore mother cells, then the spores that are produced, right? So they get germinated to give rise to the incorpicuous. That is nothing but they are actually small multicellular, free living, and mostly photosynthetic thyroid gametophyte. Photosynthetic thyroid gametophyte. That means you can see them like movable and all. So they are called as prothallus. Clear? So these gametophytes, they require the cool or damp, shady places to grow for the development and all. It requires cool, damp, shady places because of its restrictions for the development. So it requires water for the fertilization also. Means during the fertilization, it requires water. So the spread of this leaving, that is the pteridophytes, is limited because of the restriction to the narrow geographical areas. Because for the development they require these condition, and it for the fertilization it requires water. So they are restricted to certain condition or certain geographical regions or certain geographical area. So the next one is about the fertilization part. So obviously, the gametophyte bears the male as well as the female sex organs. Coming to the male sex organs, it is the antheridium, and the female sex organ is archeogonia. So obviously, as I have discussed previously, water is required for the fertilization. So obviously, water is required for the transfer of this antherozoids. What are these antherozoids? Whatever the male gametes which are produced by this male sex organ, that is antheridia. So it is actually called as antherozoids. Okay. So these antherozoids has to reach to the mouth part of the archeogonium, and fusion will happen where this male gametes, it is going to fuse with the egg which is present in the archeogonium. As a result, what happens, there is a formation of zygote takes place. So this was all about what, how fertilization normally happens, like how the zygote normally forms. So this is clear to you. So as I told, now the zygote is formed. So how it is actually, what is the procedure and all? So it is actually the product of the multicellular, okay, like zygote, that it is actually how it is developed. and how you can see it, it is multicellular and well differentiated sporophyte. Okay, so which is normally dominant phase of the pteridophytes. In majority of the pteridophytes, if you see the spores formation, spores are those which leads to the development of the further, right? So further plant. So these spores formation is similar in kind. So those plants are actually called as homosporous. Whereas in some other species, like if you see in other plants, if you see like Salanganilla as well as in the Salvinilla. Okay, in these two plants, you will be seeing the kinds of spores. Two kinds of spores will be seen. So what are those? One is the macro spore as well as the microspore. Macro means large, micro means small spores. And this is actually called as heterosporous. Yeah. So this is actually called as heterosporous. So now we got this gametes that is, later on these spores will germinate, right? So obviously this megaspore and the microspore, it is going to germinate and give rise to the, again, the male as well as female gametophyte respectively. So till that, what happens? The development, everything takes place in the female gametophytes itself, in the main female plant itself. Okay, so that means these female or the male gametophytes, they normally retard in the, or they normally stay on the parent sporophyte for the various period of time till kind of development. So then this, the development of the zygote into the young embryo. See, the development of the zygote. So zygote is formed and it is on the present or retained on the parent sporophyte for the various period of time, right? So then the zygotes get developed into the young embryo. Okay, so where this development normally takes, it takes place in the female gametophyte itself, parent female gametophyte. This is clear to you. So this event is being said like till when it normally happens till the seed habit formation takes place. That means in this plant you will be seeing the seed formation now. Seed habit considered, and this step considered a very important step, and this process considered to be a very important step in the evolution. This it is mentioned. Yes, this is mentioned. So then the pteridophytes are further being classified into four classes. What are those? One is four classes that have been classified into four classes. The first class is Xylophyta. Okay, so example for Xylophyta are Coleotum is an example. Then the second one is Lycophyta. Lycophyta, mostly it comes like Selaginella as well as Lycopodium are the example for this class. And the next one is Cyanophyta. So that, Eucastium is an example for the Cyanophyta. And the last class is the Pterophyta. So here, mostly you will be seeing bryophytes you will be seeing, and terrorists you will be seeing. Adenatums are one of the examples for this tricho or techo freedom, right? So this is all about what? So this is actually all about the pteridophytes and the development of the pteridophytes. One is the gymnosperms. After the pteridophytes, so the next one is the gymnosperms. So what about the gymnosperms? Gymnosperms in which the gymno, that is nothing but naked, where sperms or sperma. Okay, sperms or sperma is nothing but seed. That means they are the plants with the ovules. So they are not enclosed by any in which the ovules, right? They have been not enclosed by any of the what do you say, that ovary walls. That means they are actually not enclosed by the ovary walls and remains exposed directly. So this is one thing. So that too, even both before the fertilization as well as after the fertilization. So the seeds are actually developed, like post fertilization, and they are not covered basically. So that these things can be seen in the gymnosperms. Like you'll be seeing the naked kind of gymnosperms will be seen. So gymnosperms, they includes what kind of size and all they includes medium sized trees to very tall trees also you can see, and even shrubs can also be seen in the gymnosperms. So one of the gymnosperms, like one of the example is giant redwood tree. So which is also called as sequoia, giant redwood tree sequoia as an example for the gymnosperm. So it is one of the most tallest tree species that you will ever see in the gymnosperm. So then coming to the roots and all. So roots, they're generally taproot. Okay, so they're generally taproots, and sometimes roots can also be seen as a symbiotic association or a relationship between like fungi. So they'll have a great roots is somewhat having a very great relationship with fungi. So for example, they have a very relationship with the fungi like mycorrhiza. It's a fungi. Like if you see in a pinus. So you will see the roots having a symbiotic relationship with the mycorrhiza fungi. So while in some others like cycas and all, you can see in this diagram, I guess. Sorry. Yes. On these diagrams. So this diagram normally represents the cycas, and this picture it represents pinus. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. So mycorrhiza, it shows a symbiotic relationship with the roots of the pinus. And another example is in some like cycas and all. So you'll see a small specialized roots. They are, called a small specialized roots are called as coralloids. Coralloids roots. They are being in associated with nitrogen fixing bacteria, that is cyanobacteria. Okay. So this is all about the symbiotic relationship between the plant that means root as well as the fungus as well as some of the bacteria. So they might be somewhat like if you see the leaf and all right. So leaf may be uh, the leaf may be very simple, or sometimes there are also component leaves can be seen. So in this thing that is cycas, as you can see the leaf. So it is somewhat pinnate kind of leaf can be seen. Okay, so they will be left for a long years, like for a very few years, they will be lived. So whereas the leaves in the gymnosperms are well adapted to withstand the high temperature, high pressure, as well as humidity and all. Okay, humidity as well as wind. So these all things you can see in the gymnosperms. So in this confirms that the so when you see a plant leaves, basically it will be needle-like structure. Needle-like leaves will be seen. Leaves, which reduces the surface area. This is one point, and that thick cuticles you can see other leaves, cuticles and sunken stomata can be seen. So that is thin cuticles as well as sunken stomata. So these things, it is actually going to help in the reduction of the or else the water loss. Okay, so this is all about general features or general characteristics of the gymnosperms. So coming to the next part of the gymnosperms, you can actually see the gymnosperms are basically the heterosporous. So what do you mean by heterosporous? That means they normally produce haploid microsporous as well as megasporous. So both can be produced. So two kinds of spores are produced. So that is clear. One is microsporous spores as well as the megaspores. So within where they are produced actually, they are produced within the sporangia. Okay, where they are produced within the sporangia that are born on the sporophytes, which are arranged spherically along an axis to form a axon compact conus. Like if you see any of the plant of this gymnosperms, so basically you'll be seeing in the middle. So these all things will be arranged so that in a spherically structure or way and all. So these sporophiles will be arranged. Then this thing that been compacted, right? Axis, like in the middle of the axis, they will be formed. So they're actually called as strawberry or as the cones, conus. So this strawberry, it normally bears a microsporophiles as well as the megas, this microsporophiles as well as the microsporangia, right? So these bearing, like where the strawberry is bearing this microsporophiles as well as microsporangia, so it is called as microsporo sporangulae or the male strawberry. Okay, so that means basically what happens if the strawberry is going to bear both microsporophilus as well as the microsporangia, then we normally call it as microsporangiate. Microsporangiate. So you are clear with this thing. So then this microspores, they later on, it is going to develop into the male gametophyte generation. So which is highly reduced and then confined to only a limited number of cells. That means only limited number of cells will be formed. So this reduced gametophyte is actually called as pollen grains. So that means from this, uh, you know, uh, gymnosperms, you'll be seeing the production of the pollen grains. So this is all what this sentence is saying is the microspore will be obviously developed, right? So they are going to develop into the male gametophyte. So generative instead of spores, so actually you will be seeing the pollen grain generation. So that I have already discussed in the sexual reproduction of flowering plants where male pollen grains formation will take place, where reduction division normally takes place. This is all thing I have explained, right? So from this gymnosperms itself, this that is the generation or production, of this pollen grains normally takes place. Yes. Next, coming to the next further point, the development is of this pollen grains, right? So yeah, so this development of this pollen grains takes place where it takes place within the uh, microsporangia. Okay, so it normally takes place within the microsporangia, and I have told you that it normally bears the cones. So that is basically this cone bearing the sporangia. So will be with the ovules also or with the megasporangia. Okay, so they are that means the cone bearing microsporangia with the ovules or the megasporangia. They are actually called as macrosporangiate or basically the female strobili. Clear? So this is all about the male and female. So in female, basically it will be having a cone-like structure. So they will be consisting of the ovule or else as the megasporangia. It will be consisting. So together we normally called it as megasporangia or as the female strobilia. Okay, strobili. So this is clear with this. So when coming to the male and female, so obviously they are different, right? So the male or the female coons or the strawberry, okay, maybe on the same tree. That means if you see them clearly, they might be in the same tree itself, or else it might be in the different trees. Like same trees instance, you'll actually be seeing those things in pinus, like the picture which I have shown you before. So where both male and female will be present. And however, like if you take the cycans as an example, so male cones will be different and the female cones will be in the different plant itself or in the different tree itself. Then the megaspore mothers, as you know, it normally differentiate to form one or two cells of the nucleus. So this nucleus is being protected by the envelope, that is nuclear envelope, and composed of the structure, and it is actually called as ovule. In female, I'm talking. Okay. And this ovules are born from where? Born on megasporophyllus. Okay, which may be either they might be clustered or it forms a female cones. So this is clear now. So then what happens? This megaspore mother cells, so they are going to get, that is the megaspore mother cells. So they are going to divide mitotically, divide meiotically. Yeah, this megaspore mother cells, it is later on going to divide meiotically to form how much? Four megaspore, right? So to form four megaspores, right? So one of the megaspores will be enclosed within the megasporangium, and then it is going to develop as the multicellular female gametophyte. So then it is going to bear how much? Two or more. So this, what I'm talking, that is multicellular female gametophyte, So it is going to bear uh, two or more archegonia. Okay, what is archegonia? Archegonia is nothing but the female sex organ in the gymnosperm. Okay, so this is the female sex organ. Then the multicellular female gametophytes, is also retained within the megasporangium. So this is all about the male as well as female. So this thing is all about the male, and this thing is all about the female sex organs of the gymnosperms. Done. So coming to the next thing, unlike the bryophytes or pteridophytes, in the gymnosperms also, you will be seeing the male and female gametophytes, but they do not have any independent free living, existence. That means you have seen that the male were different, female were free living and all, where in bryophytes as well as in the pteridophytes you have seen. But as I have explained you right now about the male and female, you are clear that they are not individual, that is independent being, right? So they are not independently free living beings. So they remains where? So then normally, they remains within the, sorry, yeah, within the sporangia, and retained within the sporangia, and they're going to retain on the sporophytes. So this is one point. So the next thing is the pollen grains that has been released by the male, that has been released by the like microsporangium. So this is another point. Like in male, the pollen grains are always being released from the microsporangium. This is another point. So they are being carried out by the air currents or wind currents, and later on, they will come in contact with the openings of the ovules. Then that is the, what do you say, that megasporophiles. Then what happens? Again, obviously, the pollen tube formation will happen, and then the pollen grains, so it is going to move towards the male gametes in the pollen grains. So it will come, and the male gametes will start moving towards the archaea gonia, okay, in the ovule. So there it is going to discharge their content there near the mouth of the archegonia or archegonium. So fertilization will take place. Then the zygote formation will happen. So after zygote formation happens, the zygote will later on develop into embryo, zygote to embryo, and whatever the ovular formations will happen, right? So that gets converted into seeds. Okay. So the seeds are not covered, and whatever the seeds are produced, right? Seeds are not covered. And this is all about the, yes, gymnosperms. This is all about the gymnosperms. So gymnosperms are the very first being where the seed development has been seen. So this is all about the gymnosperms. The last one in the plant kingdom is angiosperms. So what about the angiosperms? Angiosperms, just like if you compare the you know gymnosperms from the angiosperms, you have seen in gymnosperms the ovule are naked, but in angiosperms they're not naked. So like angiosperms are actually the flowering plants. This is the basically, and I'm talking about the angiosperms. They're basically the flowering plants, and you'll be seeing a well-structured pollen grains as well as the ovules are developed now. And there is a specialized structure where they are developed in a very specialized structure that are actually called as flowers. So in the angiosperms, the seeds are actually enclosed in the fruits. This is another point. Seeds are enclosed in where fruits. So then they're actually the large group that you can see worldwide. So their wide range of habitats can be observed. So their size ranges from very smaller to large trees, which varies like over 100 meters also. This is another point. So they normally provide us with food, then they normally provide us with food, then foders, then they're all being used as an economic importance also, like medicines and several other components are also being used or being extracted from the angiosperms. So again, in this angiosperms, they have been divided into two classes. So one is dicotyledon and the mono cotyledons. So dicotyledons as well as the monocotyledons. So this is all about the angiosperms. Dicotyledons, you can actually see them, which are actually bearing flowers, and you can see the roots and all. So they are basically the monocotyledons. So this is all about the plant kingdom. So in plant kingdom, we have studied, or we have what all they includes. Basically, one is algae, obviously, then the bryophytes, stereophytes, the gymnosperms, and the last one is angiosperms. Yes, this is all about the bryophytes. The last, I just want to add this one thing, that is a person who never make a mistake will never try anything new. That means that if you have never made a mistake, or if you have never committed a mistake, especially during your learning process, that means you have tried nothing. Okay, so if mistakes are happening while you are attending any exams like mock test and all, so that means you are actually trying, you are giving your best. Okay, so that you will rectify your mistakes. Only thing that you need to concentrate is you need to rectify your mistakes. You need to make sure that where all the parts, or what exactly you have made the mistakes, so that you do not, you do not make sure that you do not repeat that in the coming test or next time. So that is what you need to keep in mind.